Howdy do y'all, this is John, and today we are talking about You Only Live Twice, a movie that came out in 1967, starring Sean Connery as James Bond. And then You Only Live Twice, Spectre is kidnapping US and Russian spaceships along with their astronauts in order to try and start a war between the US and Russia, which we all know would lead to World War III. So MI6 sends James Bond to Japan to try and deal with Spectre and their base there. And unfortunately, he's doing it all alone because MI6 is like the only organization that suspects Spectre. Well, them and some Japanese allies. Now, getting into it first and foremost, what I liked about the movie. I honestly think that this has some of the best age of special effects in the Sean Connery era of James Bond. Now, that don't mean they're the greatest, because it's like this with almost every 60s movie. You notice the special effects, wires holding up miniatures, that kind of stuff. But as far as how much effort was put into it, as well as money, you could tell a lot of effort and a lot of financing went into the special effects in the movie. They're not as good as 2001: A Space Odyssey, but as far as 60 special effects go, they are definitely well above average. Now, as far as the acting goes, Sean Connery, you can tell he's getting a little tired of playing James Bond in this movie, but not to an extreme degree. The guy is still putting in a lot of effort, but you can definitely tell he's getting a little tired at this point. However, probably the best performance in the entire movie is done by Donald Pleasence, who plays the movie's lead villain, Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Blofeld, to an extent, appears in at least 2 other Bond movies before this. However, you never see his face, and really you only hear his voice, see his hands, see his feet. With this movie, they just let you know what Blofeld looks like, and they also recasted him with Donald Pleasence, who is phenomenal as Blofeld. The guy probably did the best performance we're ever going to see as Blofeld, and I don't think any other actor will probably be able to outdo what he did. There was this cold menace that Pleasence put in his performance as Blofeld that just simply made him a very intense villain. Speaking of the villains, the big evil plan in this movie is okay. It's definitely reaching for the moon a little bit, but if done right, which we probably only see that in the movies, it could work. It is plausible. It's just reaching for the moon to an extreme degree. And the combat is definitely a step up from Thunderball. However, I would still argue not the best in the series. The best in the Sean Connery era of the series is always going to be Goldfinger, but for what it's worth, the combat is really good in You Only Live Twice. The only combat scene that I would argue is kind of lacking is this helicopter fight, but it's mainly because of how noticeable the rear projection shots are. But other than the combat, there's not really much going on that's entertaining in this movie. This whole movie, from a storytelling perspective, is very lacking. It doesn't really seem to know what to do with Bond in Japan, which there's a lot Bond could do in Japan. It could make up for it with some interesting conversations, but the conversations are not very interesting at all. It also doesn't really do too much new for the story. Obviously, it takes place in Japan. Again, there's a lot you could do with setting a Bond movie in Japan. Problem is that everything this movie does do, the previous 4 movies have already done. And the only real difference in this one is cultural. I would also argue that this movie also doesn't really do much with the Bond girls. Now, in some of the previous movies, like with Romanova and From Russia with Love, they did something with her. There's usually some kind of purpose for the Bond girls, whether it just be, helping Bond out a lot or being a femme fatale. With this movie, the Bond girls don't really do much other than be Bond's love interest and, nice character flaw, but that's not enough. We need more than just that. But unfortunately, the biggest sin that this movie, creates is that it's just boring. It's very boring. It's not entertaining. And even though, there's some good combat in the movie, it's not the best in the series. And unfortunately, the aspect of this movie being boring, there's nothing else entertaining in the movie to really, make it worthwhile. So guys, at the end of the day, you only live twice. It has some good elements to it, but unfortunately, this is a bad Bond movie. It's a bad Bond movie with a not so interesting story. They didn't really do much with Bond in this new environment, and the Bond girls are not as interesting as they are in the previous movies. There is some nice combat. The special effects are ahead of standard for the time, though not 2001: A Space Odyssey. The main villain is iconic, but would honestly argue that this is far weaker than the previous 4 movies, and I could not enjoy it. I'm going to give You Only Live Twice a 4. One more Bond movie left, and unfortunately, it's one of the worst in the series. But we do get a new Bond video game after that, which hopefully that will be good. And, I'm definitely looking forward to it. After all, why else am I doing this? Other than to commemorate the upcoming game. Okay, if I'm being honest, I probably would be doing this if there was a new Bond movie coming out. Anyway, well, that's all the time I have for today. Please look forward to more videos real soon. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Please also subscribe if you're new to the channel. Please don't forget, I also have a secondary channel where we do gaming content. Please go check it out. As per usual, please remember, the Podetsky will.